On the morning of April 19, 1995, a decorated Gulf War combat vet blew up the federal building in Oklahoma City using a truck bomb that he didn't build in a Ryder truck that he didn't rent with the help of a passenger who didn't exist. Having just gotten away with the largest act of terrorism on U.S. soil to date, the Fort Bragg-trained Special Forces Sheep Drip Dropout blended in with the crowd by making his getaway in a car without a license plate and was immediately pulled over. The ATF was the supposed target of the attack, but luckily all of their agents were out of the office that morning. Later that day, the president boldly declared,
"We will find the people who did this.
And
when we do, justice will be swift, certain, and severe."
Except for
John Doe number 2.
John Doe number 2.
John Doe number 2.
Who, according to the FBI, never existed. In McVeigh's unprecedented 3.5-week trial, the prosecution didn't show the CCTV footage of him and John Doe number 2 parking the Ryder truck. Didn't explain why 24 separate witnesses mass hallucinated the existence of John Doe number 2. Didn't explain why the government was testing truck bombs and the Army was storing Ryder trucks at Camp Gruber right before the bombing, and didn't talk to the FBI informants who blew the whistle on the plot. But they did collaborate with the CIA, and they did convict McVeigh as the lone wolf bomber and Terry Nichols as his bomb-constructing accomplice. Still, a bunch of crazy conspiracy theorists, including 300 bombing victims, insist on talking about facts and evidence and refuse to simply believe what they've been told a million times by people in tailored suits with well-coiffed hair. They quote the U.S. Army Brigadier General and the FBI crime lab whistleblower and the inventor of the neutron bomb who point out the physical impossibility that the Ryder truck bomb did the damage to the building, but that doesn't matter because if there were other bombs in the building that day, we would have heard about them.
The second explosive was found and defused.
I think he said another bomb.
The Justice Department is reporting that a second explosive device has been found.
They then found a third device, which was also larger than the first.
And I see another bomb truck going, so apparently they're going to try to get out that third bomb.
The FBI claims to have lost the footage showing McVeigh and John Doe number 2 parking the truck in front of the Murrah building that morning, but that's understandable because the Bureau has a lot of important evidence to store. Terry Nichols insists the FBI was involved in the plot, but thankfully a judge has saved us the trouble of listening to him by preventing lawyers from deposing him. There was a bomb squad truck parked across the street 2 hours before the blast, but that just shows the authorities were prepared for anything. And
other documents obtained by 2020 show that someone called the Executive Secretariat's office at the Justice Department in Washington and said the Murrah building had been bombed. But this was 24 minutes before the blast.
But that just shows the public was unusually vigilant that morning. Also,
apparently, before the bombing, Governor Frank Keating's brother, Mark, had been working on a novel about a terrorist bombing in Oklahoma City. Stranger still, one of the characters in the novel was named Thomas McVeigh.
But that's probably just a coincidence. McVeigh wrote a letter to his sister where he admitted to being a secret Special Forces operative, and he complained to friends of the pain in his ass from an Army-implanted microchip, but that's crazy because if he didn't actually leave the Army in 1991, there would be proof of that. This man never existed, and if you say otherwise, you're a crazy government-hating nutjob who deserves to be locked in a cage for the rest of your life. Likewise, him, her, them, her, and him. And him and him. McVeigh was not executed on May 16, 2001 as scheduled because
the FBI had failed to turn over thousands of pages of evidence to McVeigh's defense attorneys.
But the execution went ahead on June 11th. In a highly unusual and secret agreement, no autopsy was performed. One witness said he was still breathing, and the prison officials admitted his hearse was a decoy. Then, the case was officially closed. This is the story of OKC as told to you by the same truth-tellers behind
perhaps a profoundly lonely man who craved attention but found consolation in doing good.
And
the helicopter we were traveling in was forced down after being hit by an RPG.
And
we're with the rebels. And he said, "Oh, you're with the rebels?" And they started beating him. "Oh, you're with the rebels? Don't you support Bashar?"
And if you question any part of this story, you are a paranoid wingnut birther, truther, tenther, prepper conspiracy loon who should feel guilty for having been born. If you love baseball, fluffy kittens, hot dogs, Barbie, Star Wars, and freedom, you will never ever bring up any of these points ever again. Ever. This message has been brought to you by the friends of the FBI, ATF, DOJ, CIA, SPLC, MSM, and the U.S. Army. And remember, ignorance is strength.
Back on the InfoWars Nightly News, we're joined now by one of the filmmakers of A Noble Lie on the Oklahoma City bombing movie, that is Holland Vanden Nieuwenhof, as well as Dale Phillips, one of the members of the Oklahoma Bombing Investigation Committee. Guys, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having us on, Aaron.
So let's get into the background a little bit. How did this investigative body come about as a response to the official story, and then start to get into what are the things you saw, Mr. Phillips?
Well, actually, I didn't know Charles Key at the time that the bombing took place. Representative Charles Key was immediately on top of watching the actions of the government in the case of the bombing, and I actually, of course, observed him contending with some of them concerning the facts of the bombing and what took place, and he was a rarity, and still is for that matter, in his ability and his desire to seek out the truth in occurrences such as that. And I didn't know him at that time, but I told my wife at the time that I wanted to really get to know him because it was very impressive that he had the courage to stand up against what were obvious lies. When the bombing took place, there was, of course, everybody knows what the building looked like and all that, but there was 5 times when they stopped the rescue operations to take out armaments and other things that the local news media stated were left in the building and that were taken out. Even the governor stated that they had those kind of things in their possession and were researching them and trying to use those to figure out who did it. Well, it wasn't very long after that after the feds came in on the second day, that the whole story started changing, and Charles started coming against the obvious cover-up and lies, and that impressed me, and so I got to know him. Went to have lunch with him and talked to him about what to do. He said he wanted to start the Oklahoma Bombing Investigation Committee, and would consider having me on it, so I helped him start it, actually, and I'm glad that I did.
So tell us a little more about your background, and when did you first become suspicious of what the media was reporting versus the apparent facts on the ground?
Well, the very thing that I just told you, the fact that they stopped the rescue operations and to take out armaments, and then when the feds came in and they never mentioned armaments again, never mentioned other explosives found in the building that the governor actually talked about on TV. But those kind of things weren't talked about again. It's amazing how they can expect people to just totally forget what they were told yesterday. And for that matter, it's amazing how many people do forget. In the case of the 6 years of investigation that we did, we interviewed a lot of people that we rehashed the beginning day and a half of what went on, and they would say to us, "Oh yeah, I remember that the news media did report that they were stopping the rescue to do this and to do that." But people will forget real quick, and if you just tell them over and over and over that something is black, they will forget that it was white.
So, Holland, A Noble Lie has so much laid out about this case, and the Bombing Investigative Committee is just one part of it. Help us draw some of the background picture, how big this lie is, why it's still important today, and then let's get back into the investigative committee itself and what they found.
The Oklahoma City bombing is important for people to realize the facts of, because it's such a demonstrable case of the official story being utterly false. You have to remember the Oklahoma City bombing occurred in the infancy of the internet, when the dissemination of information wasn't so rapid as it is today. If they tried something as sloppy as Oklahoma City today, it would gain a lot more exposure, and they probably learned a lot from that attack. But it is such a demonstrable case of the official story being false and a lie that it calls into question every official story for any kind of terrorist event that happens since then and in the future.
Sure. Yeah. And then, so let's get back into the Oklahoma City Bombing Investigative Committee. What journey did that take? What kind of role did State Rep Charles Key play? And what did you find, Mr. Phillips?
Well, we actually, Charles Key headed up the committee and brought people on the committee, and we even hired our own investigators. We gathered up public funds just from people that would, like myself or others, that would give some funds to hire investigators. And we had an office staff, and we were starting to pull in information. We interviewed I don't really know how many he could tell you, but probably got into hundreds of witnesses from every area of concern. And because we could see that the government was purposely trying to cover up everything, and the state government seemed to be working with the feds in that regard, that we had to go get our own investigation. And we did that. And we were fighting to get a grand jury to look at that. And we did. We had to fight the state all the way, every level, all the way through the state Supreme Court to get the state constitutional provided a grand jury in a case like this. And Bob Macy was the district attorney at that time, and he fought us all the way, every level. And one time in a meeting with him, Charles actually asked him, and you could ask Charles about this sometime, that why are you fighting us every level of this? Why don't you stop fighting us? And he said, they won't let me. And Charles said, who are they? And he wouldn't say. So anyway, but we did take it all the way through. We did get the state Supreme Court to honor our request for a grand jury. And we did have a grand jury, and we obtained, I don't know what it was, $1 million or something to help us with the grand jury. Well, lo and behold, they put the grand jury, they put Bob Macy in charge of the grand jury. So they put our enemy, in a sense, in charge of the grand jury, and then gave him the money, and he proceeded to investigate us.
But that's huge. You've got so many facts of the case not adding up at all. In hindsight, it's clear what it was, and yet you've got these officials not caring that people in their own state and their own home area were killed from this bombing. They don't care how many lies and cover-ups are going on. He just tells Key to his face that they won't let me stop basically covering this up. I've never heard that before.
Well, the thing is, people like Dale Phillips and Charles Key and other people we interviewed, they didn't start out distrusting the government. They wanted truth to be done in this case. They were victims, many of them, the people we've interviewed, of the bombing. But when they saw that the government was not pursuing evidence, not pursuing leads, ignoring things that people had seen, manipulating reality, they tried to use the system. They went through the petition system. They went through the grand jury. And at every level, the government failed to abide by its own obligations to the citizens. And now, with the noble lie, at least we're reclaiming history. If we can't have some of these people in the witness stand answering harsh questions, at the very least we can reclaim history and stop remembering the lives of those 168 people with a lie. Let's remember them with the truth and seeking real truth and justice instead of covering it up.
V.Z. Lawton is one of our one of the committee members. You may have already interviewed V.Z. I'm not sure. V.Z.'s pretty sick right now. Probably can't be interviewed anymore. But he was in the building at the time that the explosion went off. And he will tell you that the building was coming down before the truck bomb went off. So obviously there were armaments in the building on the columns that ripped those columns apart, threw them around, that an air blast wouldn't even break. An air blast couldn't break those columns, much less pull them up, twist them around, and throw them around. An air blast would have broken some windows, possibly. That's pretty well it.
Sure. Now, in your own role, Mr. Phillips, were you ever intimidated or told to shut up about the case? Because we've talked to other cops who were on the scene. Don Browning, I think his name was, his life was threatened. Other people were threatened during the course of the investigation and the grand jury. What did you see along those lines, sir?
Actually, I never had that happen. So if I'm making up anything, I'd make that one up. But I haven't had that happen. And I will say this, that the committee had prayer every time we had a meeting. We had lots of meetings for 6 years. We had a protective prayer each time that God would help us go forward and get the facts documented for the book that we have. And to my knowledge, Charles himself was not threatened. I was never threatened.
Sure. And of course, prayer does work. Tell us more about the book or the report you worked on, and how did this play out through the grand jury investigation? Did they ignore the questions that you had all raised in your own investigation, or what happened from that point?
No, they didn't want to know anything about our book and didn't want to know anything about our questions. They didn't call me in. I was even guarded from that. Charles was called in, and a couple others were called in, but for questioning by the grand jury. And the very grand jury that we got put together, we got 13,500 signatures. There was only 5,000 required. And but they didn't want to have. They didn't want any of our questions, and didn't want, for that matter, any of our answers.
I think this goes back to what you kind of pointed out, Holland, that at the time of the 1995 Oklahoma City bombing, they really felt they had control over the media. They could tell blatant lies and still manage them, make sure they had reporters and key witnesses they could control, et cetera. That was probably even less so on 9/11, even though the number of witnesses was multiplied by some factor, the number of people aware of the event around the world, the number of questions, even at a heightened phase. But I think over time you do see an unraveling of the control they assumed they had in 1995, maybe still thought they had in 2001. But now we could see where the power of internet is really eroding heavily at that. And hopefully knowledge about these events is going to prevent further events in the future from happening. What's your take, Colin?
Well, I mean, the false flag attack, if that's what these attacks truly are, and I do personally think they are, is an old formula, let's hope. That's what they've used time and time again in the past. But hopefully with the information revolution that we're catching up faster than the cover-up can extend, that we're learning faster than they can cover things up. So I'm hoping that by exposing these operations as soon as they happen and exposing ones in the past, that we are evolving, hopefully, past the point where they can effectively use a false flag attack against us. And if they do, it might just blow up in their face when they get exposed to the world as the frauds and the criminals and the murderers, the mass murderers they truly are.
Dale Phillips, what do you see for the future of the truth? Will the truth continue to come out about Oklahoma City? Do you think that venue is going to be in films like A Noble Lie or in investigative bodies of the future? And where does the country go from here? Where's the future of these kind of horrible attacks?
Well, you know, I've said forever that government can be as corrupt as they want to be, and you can straighten that out. It's when your news media gets corrupt that you're dead in the water. And our country has gotten to a point now where the MSM, the mainstream media, is pretty well totally corrupt. All of them are controlled by members of organizations that are international. And therefore, they do what they're told, and they you see it happening in this election that's going on right now. So the main news media is dying, though, pretty fast. Mm-hmm. It just depends on whether they can put laws in force, which, in my opinion, they're trying to do, to stamp out the kind of opportunity that's going on right now with me being interviewed.
What do you see for the future also of the extremism issue? So much of the white supremacist movement was supposedly brought in to the Oklahoma City attack, and we see it played out again in the Obama administration, another Democratic administration. A lot of the same officials involved, Eric Holder and others, and they still continue to pursue this line that somehow there's a cadre of extremists out in the country, and on their behalf, they've got to kind of get everyone under control, ask nosy questions, put everyone under suspicion, all to prevent this kind of thing from happening again.
Well, there was actually the week we released A Noble Lie in December, an article came out from the Daily Beast, an organ, the online organ of Newsweek magazine, detailing the profiles and adventures of an undercover FBI agent named Matthews, who had been infiltrating the neo-Nazi and far-radical right in the 90s. He'd worked for 10 years as an FBI undercover informant. He is a Marine veteran of Vietnam, and he thought he was doing the right thing. But he quit, and this is actually profiled in Newsweek. He quit when he realized that the FBI's job was to actually incite these militias. I mean, a lot of these groups are being fed firearms from military bases. It's not like some of these far-right militias were stealing weapons. They were actually being fed weapons to incite a fight with the neo-Nazi and far-radical right and some of the militias that were associated with that, truthfully or not. And the fact is that Newsweek article, which mentioned an undercover FBI operation called PACCON, Patriot Conspiracy, which was the FBI operation to infiltrate every far-right organization in the United States in the mid-'90s and implicate them in firearms and explosives felonies. PACCON all mentions of PACON were cut out of the Newsweek article. That is still sensitive. In fact, one FBI agent said PACON will get you killed. And we believe that Oklahoma City was perhaps spawned out of Operation PACON in the mid-90s.
That's very interesting.
I think it's true that what we have going on seems obvious to me, that we have every form, whether it's domestic or international or otherwise, of proposed terrorism that the world leaders, so to speak, if you want to call them, behind the scenes are trying to scare the public into giving up rights, giving up guns, giving up any kind of protection by using the fact that there's a terrorist behind every bush and around every corner. And they're being pretty successful at it at this point. But I think whether it's the neo-Nazis or whether it's the skinheads or whether it's all the other things we could name, all of those are being fed to the public on a basis of, we're going to protect you from them. So you need to give up your rights.
I totally agree, and I think that's why A Noble Lie is still important. Not only is it a well-made film, very captivating, hit on a lot of details I wasn't aware of, even though I kind of got the larger picture. It was one of these false flags. But the fact is, we see them continuing to try to take away our rights under whatever pretext. And then when people shout out about it, cite the Constitution, etc., they've got these weird extremist cutouts they could put to deflect the public, keep the public from embracing the very people trying to defend the Constitution as they destroy it. Your closing comments, and we thank you for joining us, of course.
Mine?
Both of you guys.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, it's good that you brought that up because actually this anniversary, the 17th anniversary on Thursday, April 19th at 7 p.m., We Are Change, Oklahoma is going to be passing out 500 free copies of A Noble Lie to everyone who's participating in the anniversary ceremonies downtown at the memorial, because we don't want them to remember the slain with a lie. We want to reclaim the truth from history.
I very much appreciate the work of the group that has taken our book, The Final Report, that we worked 6 years on and gathered up several $100,000 of money from the public and hired our own investigators and worked very hard to put together. I very much appreciate them putting this movie together, which is kind of based on that book, or at least most of the information, or a lot of information from that book, and dragging up the fact that this kind of thing can happen, and the less that is done to come against government lies, the more is going to take place in the future. I can remember when I believe Charles was on the O'Reilly show, and they gave him a list of questions and then came back, and when they really started questioning him, we asked him about this, but they changed the questions totally of what they asked him than what they told him they were going to ask him. That's not a nice thing to do. But anyway, at the end, when he got started talking about the Middle East and so forth and so on, which they had never brought up in the questioning, he made the statement that if we don't handle this case right, and we don't try to dig into it and protect the public with information that comes from this case, worse things will happen. Voila, 9/11.
Mm-hmm. The final report for the Oklahoma Bombing Investigation Committee actually came out 3 weeks before 9/11. I'm not saying the two are related, but the fact that 9/11 happened kind of drew attention away from the conclusions of the bombing committee. And that story was ignored because that was the compilation of years of effort of disproving the official story. And like Dale said, we based a lot of the information in A Noble Lie upon the final report of the bombing commission.
It is interesting, though, that they look for any opportunity to give closure to the issue and forget about the questions that were so painstakingly drawn out. And we appreciate you both for joining us. It's nice to meet you, Mr. Dale Phillips, and we'll continue to cover the Oklahoma City issue and this great film, which we also have at Infowars.com. And as you pointed out, the anniversary for OKC is coming up this week, right?
Yes, this Thursday, We Are Change Oklahoma is going to be passing out 500 free copies of the movie to everyone going inside for the anniversary ceremonies to try to let them know that there are unanswered questions about the bombing. And the people holding these anniversary ceremonies are not remembering the dead truthfully. They're remembering them with a lie, and that's not right.
Thanks again for joining us. And that's all for the InfoWars Nightly News. We'll be back again tomorrow.
Well, this was used to silence anybody else that was going to investigate this. You know.
And by the way, see, those sheriffs right then should have just arrested those feds. I mean, clearly, you're covering this up. You were involved. But see, not in America now. Oh, you're a Fed. Oh, let me grovel to you. But again, dovetailing this, look at Fast and Furious. Look at how they were shipping the guns into Mexico, drugs back in. It's even in the New York Times now, but nobody's in trouble.
And ABC just came out with internal emails saying that they were going to use this event to issue new gun control legislation. I mean, it's just out in the open now. Something else that was interesting about teriyaki is one of the hallmarks of an ammonium nitrate and fuel oil bomb is a nitric gas cloud. Anytime that it was used in Ireland 41 years ago last August in Stirling Hall, they set off an ANFO bomb. The first 26 responders were hospitalized from inhalation of nitric gas. That did not occur at the Oklahoma City bombing. Teriyaki was on the scene within minutes and saved 8 people's lives that day. All of the survivors said that they had no problem with respiration other than a little bit of the smoke from the cars that were out front. So there was no ammonium nitrate gas, which calls into question that ANFO was even used at all.
No, they did that to then start tracking farmers and teach that, you know, the American people are terrorists. Now, again, why were they so scared of Terrence Yeagy? I mean, you interview his mother in this film. I believe that's the first time she's been interviewed in a film. I mean, folks, I can't tell you, this is a true investigative masterwork, and it's cyanide to these vampires. This is a big old bucket of holy water, a big old silver cross to Count Dracula, but you've got to get it, and you've got to use it against them. I'll just ask you on air, what's your stance on folks airing this on Access TV?
We encourage it. If anybody wants to set up a local screening, they can get in contact with us at contact@freemindfilms.com. We'll send them movie posters that they can use to promote it. Other people are talking about putting it in the libraries. They can go to InfoWars store, buy it there, put it in the libraries, get the word out.
We've had, in fact, a member of the bombing committee, very active in a local parish here in Oklahoma City, wants to do a showing at his church. We encourage that. I'm looking forward to meeting the pastor. So the word.
Well, Americans couldn't believe the government was this evil 15, 16 years ago. But doesn't Fast and Furious and Tonkin being declassified and all this stuff being out now, and that us evil 9/11 truthers question things, we've broken the ice. So people now understand this. But why do you think all these White House advisors are so arrogant? It's like 5 of them now are pleading, if we just had one, it would really help you. I mean, how dumb do they think we are to be writing articles saying, we'll blame our enemies, we really need one? And obviously the higher-ups are going, no, they're on to us, we can't do it.
They're intoxicated with arrogance, Alex, and you know all the intel on this, most of it, and what we've seen, you're right, it's absolutely unbelievable that they can get up in the morning and look at themselves in the mirror and think that they can actually get away with this. They have no value for human life, and we saw it firsthand here.
Yeah, when you look at the, all of the criteria of a psychopath, these people actually meet all of the criteria. They believe that we are actually lesser beings than they are, and they have no remorse for, riding our ashes to their own political ends.
Now, the head of the FBI's counterterrorism group claimed he was in Dallas and got a Southwest flight. Turned out he didn't fly. They have the hotel receipts. He's that arrogant. We know some of the teams that were already there. And so from your deep research, because you guys are nose to the grindstone on this, go through some more of the points, but also as best we can tell exactly who was involved in this. From my research, it's FBI, high-level government special forces, some private think tanks, some foreign intelligence operatives, and FBI.
Well, we have here in Oklahoma, in eastern Oklahoma, we have a white separatist compound called Elohim City. Now, this seemed to be a base of operations for the Oklahoma City bombing. You had FBI informant ATF informant Carol Howe was telling the ATF prior to the Oklahoma City bombing that these people were scouting out locations to attack federal buildings. There was foreknowledge there. We've got a witness, actual resident of Elohim City, that says that he can place Timothy McVeigh on site.
They were using it as a cutout, and the Southern Poverty Law Center had operatives in there, correct?
Exactly, yes, and that's
sir.
Some of the documents that Jesse Trinidou has uncovered is that there were at least 6 Southern Poverty Law Center operatives at Elohim City at the time. And, he said anytime you've got 5 people talking about overthrowing the government, 3 of them are working for the government. And it looks like they're using the Southern Poverty Law Center as a private wing of the FBI and ATF to be able to do operations that, they wouldn't normally be able to do because of, any restrictions of the institutions. Yeah. So out of that city, you've got Andreas Strassmeyer. Now, that's the gentleman that Jane Graham saw in the basement with the gray putty and wire. He was working out of Elohim City at the same time that McVeigh was there. So, you know, these are the players that tie all of this together.
Now, why were so many Iraqis brought in that had been brought in after the first Gulf War by Bush Sr. and Clinton? Was that a cover story or an emergency plan B to blame it on Arabs and Muslims if the domestic terror route didn't go well?
You know, that's a red herring, Alex. I wish we could put a better thumb on that, but you're right. There were over 5,000 refugees that were located to the Midwest and the Oklahoma City area in Oklahoma. A lot of the folks that were suspect on this case, we know that some of them still live here in the city, and it's very, very disgusting to see that they weren't brought into custody. We know that some of them were complicit, but we just couldn't include that in the film because we didn't have enough definitive information.
Another thing that concerns me about that is former CIA Director Woosley is actually now publicly stating, yes, you know, he thinks that there was Al-Qaeda involvement and such. And it looks like they're trying to use this to support the you know.
Well, I've always said they were going to double back because those guys were trained by the CIA when Saddam was, quote, the U.S. ally. And so that's why they were brought back out. Most of them were double agents who were helping give intel on Saddam. So they were brought back out at the end of the last Gulf War. And so we know some of them were videotaped, were involved, and then were allowed to leave the country. So, again, this is a classic intel op where they've got layer after layer so that no one knows the full story but the mastermind. I wonder what Mr. Holter can tell us.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we need to hold these people accountable. They're still in positions of power today. You know, we see that McVeigh was actually telling his family and everybody that he was actually working for the government to fly drugs into the United States and assassinate security risks. Even, you know, Terry Nichols, after he had gone through his federal and state trials, was saying that, you know, he was ready to spill the beans about the other people that were involved. And people will question, well, if McVeigh was involved with all these other people and he was about to be put to death, why does he not, you know, turn them out and tell them what happened? Well, I think that, you know, the presence of Dr. Jolyon West, he consulted with McVeigh's defense team after his arrest. He was the #2 psychological warfare expert in the country just under Dr. Ewan Cameron. He worked with Patty Hearst, Saran and Jack Ruby. Now, after that...
Stay there. You can't make this up. He was the assigned doctor for him from the arrest up to the execution. Every time McVeigh was on TV, he was drugged out of his gourd. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Folks, I cannot express to you enough that exposing false flag terror is the key at this temporal level of existence to bringing down these people, because everything they do is stage a crisis, offer a solution. They stage a global financial crisis, take over society as the solution. On record. They don't even deny that. They stage, oh my gosh, carbon dioxide is deadly, the Earth's going to die, we got to tax and control everything to save the Earth. Oh my gosh, we've got to take all your rights and invade and attack all these countries because you're in danger and they're going to blow stuff up. It's the oldest trick in the book, problem, reaction, solution. And again, I'm not going to push this much more. I just hope that you give the gift of truth this Christmas, whether it's all 18 of my films on DVD for 70% off, and 18 different gifts. You can do all your shopping at once. A Noble Lie, Oklahoma City 95. You get Citizen Rulebook with it, and Infowars.com, and In the Fed bumper stickers as well. That's available at Infowars.com. And, I mean, it's a life and death situation to expose that, hey, criminal elements in the government engaged in this military gambit. That's what it's called. It's really a gambit. In fact, I'll guarantee you that's what they called it. To demonize domestic groups and move towards using the military against the population. That's when all that current plan went into high gear that I became aware of at Oklahoma City. That's what really pushed me to get on air. I saw that, saw the local newscast that folks were mailing down to Austin and getting on Access TV. I was seeing like a week after it was on the news of the bombs being taken out and the governor talking about it, and press conferences with Hoppy Heidelberg or General Benton K. Parton. And I was watching what Oklahomans were seeing. And because there were folks sending it down here in a network, I was seeing it on Access TV, and I said, oh, my gosh. I'd already read in history books about Hitler blowing up the Reichstag and stuff. I said, I gotta go get on air. Like, I'm getting the same chills I got back then. And boom, because it's the heart of it. It's how they sell everything else. We got to attack Iran. They're going to nuke us. We got to have checkpoints because you can't be trusted. And it's prior restraint. It's saying you're bad, you're a terrorist, you're evil. Our guest will be with us for another 20 minutes, but I tell you, they're so informed, and they've got such a great audio and video set up. I want to invite them back up next week to do part 2 because, and you know, to really have it prepared. They can send me clips they want to play, and we can kind of go through the film and do a full review. We'll also try to do it on the nightly news, but this is so important. Going back to both of these gentlemen, we're about to go to break here, but we're going to come back in the next 20 minutes, and I'm going to turn the mic off and literally go sit in the control room so you guys can get your points out. But when we come back, what is most important in smoking guns? Well, were you guys threatened? What else is important for folks to know about the film?
The way the grand jury was given the information, they were very restricted on what they could see. And Judge David Russell, oddly enough, who presided over the grand jury, was selected. He was on the short list of judges who actually selected the defense counsel. He ended up selecting McVeigh's own counsel. So this thing was rigged from day one, even on the judicial side. Hoppy Heidelberg comes forward in the movie and pretty much tells it all out. He lays it out, how he was treated, the fact that he wasn't able to get shop drawings, he wasn't able to call the witnesses, wasn't able to call the architects, get any samples of the crime scene evidence. And he was given 3 choices on the situation. The judge pretty much could have dismissed him without cause. He could have granted Hoppy's wishes on this letter that he wrote to the judge, or he could have said no, and then given reasons why he declined to give Hoppy the information. The judge took the first option of dismissing him from the grand jury without cause. Unbelievable. This is the only guy on the 12-member jury that was asking questions that were relevant to the crime.
And the FBI came to his house with their firearms threatening him.
Exactly. He was the only one that would actually read the juror's handbook, and he knew what his rights were as a federal grand juror and demanded those. They weren't going to allow that, and they had to
stay there. Back in 1 minute. We're doing part 1 of this interview live right now with our guest, the producer and the director of the film A Noble Lie, available at Infowars.com. We were just talking about Hoppy Heidelberg with his Citizens Rulebook. He actually had one of these. Same ones we sell, the Patriot one about jury nullification, all of it, the rights of a grand juror. And they got pretty upset about that. I think I talked to him years ago. From memory, I think he tried to hand these out, too, and that really made him upset. And they just wanted the cover-up to go ahead, but he's in the film. Continue, gentlemen. This is a 5-minute segment. We got a 12-minute segment coming up before you leave us, but continue breaking down A Noble Lie and the Hoppy Heidelberg point.
Well, you were talking about intimidation, and yes, Hoppy was intimidated by the FBI. They attempted to intimidate him. He wasn't going to have any of that. But we also interview Don Browning. He's a retired Oklahoma City police officer that worked at the K-9 unit and was there for search and rescue. He said that an FBI agent said that people that like him that ask questions often end up dead. And he said that it was the way it was presented to him. He thought it was a threat, And
of course, yeah. I mean, wow. I mean, they had their hitmen everywhere. Go ahead.
Yeah. And a lot of the people that we interview in the movie, they've stated that this is going to be the last interview they do. So, I mean, this is really the last chance that we, to really encapsulate this story into one cohesive package. We've got folks like, Jane Graham, where she said, this is it. She's not going to do another one.
Exactly. One other thing that they'll appreciate this film even more is that the gentleman that actually shot, he was our director of photography, shot the interviews, had done the same thing on several anniversaries the last 4 or 5 years for Discovery Channel, for History Channel, for National Geographic. He knew firsthand what they, as they say, left on the cutting room floor. And when we approached him, he says, I'm going to do it right for you guys. He says, nothing is going to go on the cutting room floor if I can help it. And by gosh, if our editor kept at least 95% of the interviews on there. So people are going to see what Discovery, what National Geographic, and what History Channel refused to put on the networks. We are going to show it.
Yeah, that was our director of photography, Devin Winter, and he said that, those interview subjects said the same thing to them that they said to us. But this is the first time that it's all going to come out, because anything that contradicted the official story, with these mainstream media outlets obviously got cut.
Yeah, I've talked to Jane Graham, and in fact, since a lot of people are riding off of the sunset, you gave me, I already have a lot of their numbers, but we do need to get you guys back on. I forgot that point next week, and start having some of them on here and playing some clips just so the public realizes what we're talking about here. I mean, actually hear it from them. They've told all this to the mainstream media, and it never ends up getting out there because this isn't mainstream media. This is lying snake media that has brought our country to this point.
I see some of the hosts that, we look back on the archive footage and we know who the hosts are. Of course, they've aged quite a bit since then. I see them at basketball games. I'll see them at a Walmart or 7-Eleven. They know who I am. They know who James is. We know who they are, and they just avoid us like the plague. They do not even want to talk about this. I mean, they were told to shut up.
Yeah, in the early hours of the bombing, all of the local news stations were telling the truth. And then after, federal boots hit the ground, the story started to change. The only station that really maintained any integrity for a few months was the local station Channel 4. But then the New York Times came in and bought them up and fired everybody that was contradicting the official story and basically silenced any dissent.
Right there, yeah. They pulled another one out there that's bigger than the first one. I was down there this morning because I was on.
Range 9558. You gonna want anything from us live? 100 building.
And what happened next?
Just the whole back of the building just fell in on us. It's just, it was a big force. Just all fell in. Everyone along our set of offices had back injuries, head injuries, neck, bleeding, glass. I don't know.
Get some help.
We don't know what happened.
We intend to honor the dead and honor the living by finding out who did this and never permitting this conduct to recur.
Seemed like the whole world ended. The ceiling fell in and the walls fell in and there was nothing left. They've got a hot device. Get them back!
We can actually look through and see people trapped, but we can't get to them right now.
What could be their motive to hurt that many innocent people?
We're pleased that the system worked and the justice prevailed. But the verdict doesn't diminish the great sadness that occurred in Oklahoma City 2 years ago. Our only hope is that the verdict will go some way to preventing such a terrible, drastic crime from ever occurring again.
It's not done out of revenge. It's because we felt that it was necessary for Timothy McVeigh to get the death penalty. And to me, it's a very sad occasion, but it was necessary.
I feel like justice has been served because he's never shown any remorse about what's been done.
Under these special circumstances, we will arrange for a closed-circuit transmission of these events to Oklahoma City.
Timothy James McVeigh has been executed by lethal injection.
Can't believe it, Oklahoma, all this hatred fell on you. In the quiet hush of morning rush, evil blasted through. Jesus, comfort her. I saw her cry. She was running through the streets, searching for her child. All the lives hurt, all the children, all swept up by design. Sleeping angels in the clouds this night, cradled in his arms. Oh, I saw that child lying limp in his arms, and I saw that man's heart winding down. Now we look for reasons why our hearts will ask, we cannot reply. We are seeing this evil now with the will to kill and eyes that prowl. You think it's quiet for the heartland now? The storm is just begun. In the ruins lies the tears it holds, touched by hands that worked all night. As I watch my heart is torn apart, I see Oklahoma, hold on tight. Oh, I saw that child trembling in fear. She was bloody, burnt and white, holding on to anyone, holding on to love is best, helping those who are all lost. For we are living this evil still, with broken hearts and challenged wills. Justice, stop this hatred, Waco instilled. The beast, he will not win. In the minutes and the days to come, and the years they will hurt still, I swear I won't forget the suffering here. I know they never will. Jesus, comfort me. I saw Oklahoma cry. She was searching through the ruins still for more lives. Jesus, comfort her. I saw her cry. She was running through the streets, searching for a child.